Hola, hola, everyone. Welcome, Next Gen Collective. I'm Sue from Social, and I'm super excited to kick off today's live stream with an amazing guest, Luzelly Frias. Welcome. ¿Cómo estás?
Thank you. Estoy bien. I'm good. I'm happy the sun's out, hailing from Charlotte, North Carolina right now. So it's a pretty day. I'm sorry, Northeast, for this.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Next Gen, I got to tell you a little bit about Luzelly. She is not just your average executive. She's a clinical social worker and the founder of Energy Counseling, where she provides a safe space for Black and Indigenous people of color seeking support and guidance through counseling. As we honor Black History Month, we're giving the spotlight to rising Afro-Latina executives like Luzelly here, giving them the mic to give them the opportunity to share their incredible stories and insights. We're going to have a real talk about what it's like being an Afro-Latina executive in today's corporate world. So grab your snacks, get comfy, and let's dive into this conversation. Luzelly, you said you're calling from North Carolina, right?
I am, from Charlotte specifically.
Nice, nice. Well, I'm tuning in from Chicago. Hello, my Chicago people. Luzelly, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so Luzelly Frias. I'm originally from Rhode Island, smallest state in the country. Most people think I'm saying Long Island. I'm not. Rhode Island, Providence. And my parents immigrated there from the Dominican Republic. So born and raised there, moved to Boston for grad school, kind of stayed there afterwards, and moved to Charlotte, North Carolina almost about 2 years ago, and really enjoying it here. I still maintain my private practice in Massachusetts called Energy Counseling. I'm a licensed social worker, clinical social worker, and I practice as a psychotherapist now and do a little bit of other things. So sometimes some panels, some workshops and things like that, just to like spice it up and do other things.
Nice. Well, tell me a little bit about your Latina flavor. You mentioned you're Dominican. What's your favorite Dominican dish?
Pastelitos. I got them like already. Anything, honestly, from mango to salami. I am a little bit more plant-based these days. So if I can make any of my Dominican dishes a little bit more plant-friendly, then I'm definitely going to try it. So, but pastelitos take the cake no matter what's inside of them. So I know most people call them empanadas, but in
okay.
Pastelitos, which technically, you know, in other countries is something sweet. For us is more savory. So there's chicken, there's beef, ham and cheese in there, you know, all the good things.
Oh God, my mouth is watering. Yeah, when you said pastelito, my mind went to Cuban pastelitos, which has the guava paste and, the cheese inside. It's like nice and flaky.
For sure.
But yeah, I love empanadas. I love them. Any empanadas, just give them to me. They're great for lunch. Good to go on the go, and it's just awesome. Well, Luzelly, thank you so much for joining us. As I said, we're celebrating and honoring Black History Month, and we wanted to bring executives like you to basically tell us their perspective and their experience. We want to hear your stories. So I'm going to dive into the first question. Black History Month. What is a particular historical figure or moment that has inspired you? It could be like either personally or professionally. What's that African American or Afro Latino that has inspired you?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to go a little bit more non-traditional. I usually go towards people who are in the psychology realm, but I'm going to go with the artist, with the musical artist, Celia Cruz, being probably one of the first Afro-Cuban women to take on a stage of the magnitude that she did. And I know her show from a couple years ago that was streamed in Spanish was an amazing show that really highlighted just perseverance, resilience, but not just that. I know that sometimes we tend to talk a lot about how resilient Black people are, and it's like, we're more than that. We can also be soft. And I think that that show and knowing her history with her health and her family just kind of brings her a little bit closer to the experience of being Latina, specifically Black Latina too, and being an artist and coming from a place like Cuba, right, where there's so much that was happening during that time. So definitely Celia Cruz is top notch on that list.
I kind of agree with you. And I'm Cuban myself, so I have a special connection to her and her music and her story in general. We all have an immigration story to
Mm.
tell, so it's important to acknowledge. Well, thank you so much for that answer. Um, let me find out a little bit more about your work as a clinical social worker. You've undoubtedly faced many challenges, including racism or stereotypes. How do you navigate these challenges?
Yeah. I talk a lot about community and finding those other people who can hold you down during those times. I am the first social worker in my family, first person to kind of take on kind of that mental health space, but probably one of the first people that I knew in even most of my life who was doing this type of work. So it really required me to get myself out of my comfort zone, find those other people. Some of them were in either my program or in other programs across the country. Social media really helps in that realm.
Hmm.
Stereotypes about Latinx people, specifically Dominicans, I think was probably one of the biggest challenges. I know I mentioned earlier before we logged on talking about language being another thing, right? Being that bilingual person, guess what? You're going to get all those bilingual cases. You're not going to be supported as much. That culture piece is missing, right?
Right.
Misunderstanding, especially when you're working in spaces like Child Protective Services,
Hmm.
or even the medical field. So those things definitely have been challenges. I think I consider myself educator. So I also like to be able to connect with other people who are in their beginning stages, or maybe they're further along and just need that community to talk about some of these challenges that we face. So definitely, being able to find community amongst all of this is probably the most important thing, and talking about it, finding whether it's a supervisor or somebody in your circle that can really hold you down, to whether it's venting, whether it's problem solving, has been definitely helpful in my journey as a social worker.
Wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine. So as an Afro Latina celebrating both Black and Latino heritage, how do you navigate and celebrate the intersectionality that is your story and many of your clients' stories?
Yeah, definitely. So I am, Dominican. What I say about right up here. And my partner happens to be African American. So that's a discussion that we actually have a lot of. How do we merge these two when we decide to grow our family? How do we still pull on being Dominican, being Afro-Dominican, and also being African American? And there's so much similarities in our stories, in our culture of, how people got to Hispaniola and modern day Dominican Republic, and how folks got here to the United States, obviously by force.
Mm-hmm.
So we're able to talk about food, how to talk about different historical figures and places, and kind of include that in our conversations, being able to highlight Black Dominicans and the work that they do, as well as here. So that intersectionality piece, we're talking about different parts of ourselves. And I know sometimes we like to look at people as one thing and as a monolith.
Right.
And I always describe to people as, I'll use pie as an example. We can cut up a pie to different pieces, different sizes, and that doesn't make the pie any less of pie, right?
Right.
So if we are able to highlight different parts of our identity, it doesn't make us any less Latina, any less Black. It's like, that's just a part of me, and I need to acknowledge that part of me. So I use pie a lot as a reference in therapy. So
I love pie.
if I have any clients watching, they know what I'm talking about.
What's your favorite kind of pie? Now that now we're in the pie.
I like pecan pie, even though sweet potato is probably right next. And I'll cap it there. I'll cap it there. For a while. I like
love
sweet.
it. I love it. I'm a fruit girl, so apple pie, blueberry pie. Key lime pie is my favorite, though.
I'm a little newer to the key lime pie space. I like the more decadent, the heavier thing.
Yeah, pecan pie definitely is decadent. Well, you've talked a little bit about how you use your identity as Afro-Latina positively in your career. What other advantages do you see? We talked about the stereotypes. There's challenges, of course, but what are the positive sides of being an Afro-Latina and acknowledging Black History Month?
Yeah, I think it just allows us to kind of be in multiple spaces, right? You know, to be able to talk about my Dominicanness or my Latinidad and also talk about Blackness too. It kind of allows you to move amongst different spaces and bring a unique nuance to culture, to your identity that um, is just different, right? So even when we talk about Latinidad, we know that sometimes Black folks, Black Latinos are not included in that
Yeah,
conversation. You know, even if you look at some of these boards or some of these organizations that are, you know, for Latinos, and you look and you're like, oh, where are the Black Latinos? They exist. Or where are the indigenous Latinos? They exist too.
that's
Um,
true.
so that tends to be something that I notice a lot, especially as I start to explore different things for my business, whether it's grants or joining boards, seeing what work is being done out there and wanting to partner with organizations, seeing kind of this so blatant and in your face. So we see a lot of people also moving away from even the term Afro-Latino, Afro-Latina, Afro-Latinx because of that reason, and calling themselves, you know, I'm a Black Latino, I'm a
Right.
Black Dominican instead. So being able to, you know, acknowledge all these parts is so important. I think that the Latinx community is trying, is trying, and we're getting there. We're moving the needle, maybe slowly, but it's gonna happen. I think, you know, Black Latinos are here to stay.
For sure. Now, speaking of that, you talked about representation and how we're often underrepresented for the various, you know, types of Latinos or the various types of Blacks that exist. How do you advocate for greater visibility and inclusion, both in your job or your career, but also personally?
Yeah. So I would say bringing people to the forefront. You know, there was a conversation we were having before of like, who are other Afro Latinas in this space or Latinos doing this type of work or doing other type of wellness work? And I can already think of several people that come to mind, right? So it's being able to also highlight those other voices, you know, bring them to the forefront, pass that hand back, you know, and give people a seat at the table essentially, right? And if there's no seat at that table, let's create one. So there's a major need. So you see a lot of people on social media specifically creating that community for people to talk, you know, and not just talk, but also learn about history, also connect, and then have things, you know, come to fruition, whether it's conferences or meetups, or just hanging out and making friends. I think that that's so important within my business, you know, being able to market in that way to make space for other Afro Latinx people, as well as just Black women that I work with and non-binary folks. You know, people are craving that,
Yeah.
and they need it. And it's hard to find it, especially in mental health. You know, even finding a therapist for myself has been difficult sometimes, and finding a good fit is a whole other conversation. You know, so
Right.
finding somebody who can look like you, who understands your experiences. And, you know, I keep talking about being Dominican. You know, very unique experience when someone can say something about their upbringing and you're like, yep, I got it. And they don't have to over explain, you know, or, you know, try and convince someone that this is an experience that they've had. So being able to hold this space as a clinician has been remarkable. And I always, you know, say, maybe I don't say it enough to my clients and to other people, is, you know, it's an honor to have, you know, this privilege to be someone's therapist, and to hold space for their various identities. You know, we're much more than this or that, and we're from de aquí y de allá, right, at the same
Right.
time, versus ni de aquí ni de allá, which we hear a lot. And it's like,
Hmm.
I'm both, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, we're a pie still, even if we're just one slice.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it. So you talk a little bit about energy counseling, and I kind of want to know more about that. What motivated you to create it and to lean more towards a company owner as opposed to a company worker? How has being Afro Latina, like you mentioned, shaped that journey for you?
Yeah, again, going back to representation, you know, when I was in school, I was in a predominantly white school, very few people of color, even less, you know, Latinx people, and even less Afro Latinx people. You know, the numbers just start to dwindle. So clearly there's a need, right? I always viewed myself as never wanting to become a clinician, a psychotherapist. I wanted to do everything but that. And, life takes you on a journey. You find out what you like and what you don't. And I feel like, our career has a lot of twists and turns in that way, that it wasn't until the pandemic and, really having a hard time seeing the things that were occurring. I was working in the medical field at that point as a social worker. And let me tell you, there's nothing like burnout to tell you that something has to change. And it was, shout out to my bestie, Thelma Terrero, also another wonderful clinician. It wasn't until both of us were speaking and saying, this is a lot and I want more flexibility. I want to be able to do things my way and to support people that I know need the support, especially people who look like me and can't find that support. So, August 2020, we both started chatting up. We started figuring out, how do we do this? Where do we even start? Which is another gripe of mine of social work is we don't talk about the business of social work. We're creating a business. So a lot of trial and error to this day. I hit my anniversary at the beginning of this month of 3 years. Seeing my first ever client. And, I completely forgot about it until several days later. And I was like, oh, it's been 3 years of me doing this thing. This is amazing, and shout out to all the people who are putting out content, free content or paid, in regards to creating this space, because they have really, held it down to support me and other people like me and be able to pass on that knowledge. So what motivated me was I wanted to have my own thing. I come from a family of business owners. My mom has a home daycare. My family has owned bodegas, mechanic shops, kind of the whole gambit, so I think it's in me. It's in my DNA to be a business owner, right? So being able to create this, it was hard. It was hard. And my parents were like, Mira, I don't know. You getting paid well? Are you sure? This is a big risk. And it's like, I can always go back, right?
True.
And once I put that in my mind of, I can always go back to the hospital. I can always go back to the community mental health if that's really what I want to do. And that's okay if I decide to change my mind. Which that's another thing. Sometimes we feel like we get in here and we have to keep doing that thing, especially if it's so hard for it. And it's like, no, I can work hard for something and still want something different or want to pivot. So giving myself the ability to pivot too, from just seeing clients one-on-one to doing things like this, to putting on workshops, to keynotes. So I like the flexibility. So that's definitely what's motivated me to, do more. I'm a Gemini, so I get I want to do all the things.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's an incredible journey. You've already started giving some shout outs, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to shout out any other Black or Afro-Latino owned businesses and initiative that you admire. And if you're tuned in, also put there in the businesses and initiatives that you admire as well. We want to give a shout out to the people who are doing the good work and fighting the good fight out there. So, Luzelly.
Yeah, so I'll do a little bit of different things. So obviously my bestie, Thelma Terrero of the Healing Hour Therapy. She's also another Black Dominican clinician based in Massachusetts. Hopefully, maybe coming to visit a little bit more to the Carolinas, but great clinician, somebody who can definitely, meet you where you're at and support you if you're someone in Massachusetts. Another good friend, Josie Rosario, former clinician turned coach, has a great podcast that I highly recommend. If you find them on socials, most likely you'll find them by their name. If not, I'll see if I can come back to the live and maybe add it in the comments, if that's okay. If it's again.
Please do.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. She has a great podcast that I highly recommend. Some of the things that I've even said, I've learned because of her.
Nice.
So definitely recommend that. Another person, the person who made this wonderful pastelito mug that I love.
Oh my God, I love that.
She goes by Bad Dominicana on Instagram, Twitter, but she also has a website that has wonderful art, print, merchandise like this as well. I butcher her name every time and I have to remember how to pronounce it because it's not the way my brain thinks it is, and it's another way. Zaira Kelly is her name, currently located in Dominican Republic, but she does wonderful talks about Afro-Latinidad, even rechazando or getting rid of the term Afro-Latino, Afro-Latinidad, and just talking about being Black and Latinx. So great content, someone that you definitely want to pull in for conversations. And my last person, I'll say Dash Harris Machado. She does a lot of work around the same thing. She also is a co-founder of Afro-Latinx Travel, which if you are somebody who likes to travel and you want to do more of that community building and supporting the Black diaspora, that is your person. Speaker, filmmaker, kind of multimedia, everything, that's your person. So I'll make sure to add their socials and their websites under the comments so people can go follow them. And there's so many other people. I know that Hispanic Executive did an article either last year or maybe 2 years ago on Afro-Latinas that you should know. And I know that a couple of these folks have been on that list. So I'll make sure that maybe I'll even tag that at the bottom so people can go find some other folks.
Nice. Yes. Shameless plug. Shameless plug. I love it. I love it. Well, let's take a look at the comments and see what some people are saying.
Oh, yes. Can't go wrong with a good pastelito. That's for sure.
That's true.
Thank you, sis. She said, you will never pass by chicken pastelitos. That is correct. The juiciest, most filling, not that whole bunch of air in there. That's my pet peeve with pastelitos. They need to be full. And Christina, this Cuban American approves. Yes, a nice guava and cheese pastelito is up my alley too. So
for sure. For sure. Well, Luzelly, I think we're at time here, but it was a pleasure talking to you and hearing your story. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for reaching out. I'm always here to be a resource and support. If there's ever anything that you, Guerrero Media, or anybody else within the other medias need support with, especially when we're talking about Latinx mental health, and hopefully there's some good things coming down the pipeline with energy counseling and being part of organization that I can't put out there just yet, but it's going to be doing some great policy work around Latina mental health, especially with our adolescents, as suicide rates continue to rise in the Latina population of teenagers and girls. So something that definitely is important to me, and hopefully I'm sure is important to our community.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. And as we wrap up today's live stream, I wanted to shout out that this Black History Month, Guerrero is reaffirming our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So join us as we honor Black leaders shaping the future of business and beyond. This month and actually throughout the year, here at Guerrero, we showcase inspiring stories from across all of our brands. Next Gen Collective is a Guerrero brand and network, and we are just one part of our commitment as to what we're doing for Black History Month. So check out Guerrero's other brands like Hispanic Executive, Modern Council, and Profile to see what we're doing and how we're honoring Black History Month by sharing stories of Black executive. And remember, stay tuned for more amazing executive interviews right here on Next Gen Social. Luzelly, thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining us today. I'm Sue from Social, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.